The rain did not stop. It clawed at the night like it was angry at the world, like it knew what loneliness felt like and wanted everyone else to feel it too. Amara's old pickup trembled slightly as another burst of thunder cracked overhead, rattling the rearview mirror and making the cracked radio buzz faintly. She exhaled slowly. Every muscle ached, from smiling too much, from standing too long, from pretending to be invisible so people would stop noticing her in the worst ways. Her uniform clung to her back like a second skin, the thin fabric still cool from the coffee that had soaked it earlier. She could still hear the sharp laugh of a customer echoing in her mind. "Careful, sweetheart, don't cry into my pie next time." She had said nothing. She always said nothing. Because silence was safer than anger. Because kindness, even when it hurt, felt more honest than bitterness. The rain blurred the world into streaks of gray and silver as she turned down a narrow stretch of road near the edge of her neighborhood. The kind of road where only broken street lamps lived, and even they flickered like they were unsure if showing light was worth the effort. That's when she saw him more clearly. The old man? He had moved closer to the car now, shoulders hunched as if the sky had personally targeted him. The black sedan looked expensive, the kind of car men in tailored suits stepped out of at luxury hotels. Yet here it was, wounded and silent, as helpless as the man standing beside it. Amara slowed further, headlights washing over his soaked coat, the fine stitching now heavy with rain. A gust of wind pushed raindrops sideways, spattering against her window. He looked up again. For just a second, their eyes met through glass and rain and darkness. His gaze did not hold panic. It held control, careful, measured control. Yet there was something else behind it. Something almost ancient. A quiet gravity that made the air between them feel thick. Her chest tightened, but not with fear. With recognition she couldn't explain. She rolled down her window a little more. Cold rain rushed in, soaking her sleeve immediately. "You really okay out here?" she asked again, softer this time. He hesitated before stepping slightly closer to the truck. Rain slid down the sharp plane of his cheekbones like crystal. Up close, he didn't look as old as she'd first thought. His face carried wisdom, yes, and lines that spoke of years, but his posture, his eyes, the calm authority in the way he held himself, none of it belonged to weakness. "My vehicle has chosen an inconvenient moment to abandon its duties," he said, voice calm and low. "I would walk, but the storm appears determined to claim victory." A ghost of a smile tugged at her lips despite the situation. "Well, might want to let it win somewhere dry. Hop in before you turn into an ice sculpture." For a moment, he hesitated again, glancing at her as if measuring not just her words, but her soul. Something unreadable passed through his eyes, like a quiet internal decision. Then he opened the door. Cold flooded in with him. Rainwater dripped steadily from his coat, collecting on the worn rubber mat. Amara shut the door quickly and turned the heater up full blast. The old vents rattled but obeyed, breathing out air that struggled but tried. "Thank you," he said, sincerely. "You have interrupted your path for a stranger. That is not common in this world." She shrugged dismissively, pulling back onto the road. "Yeah, well, this world could use some uncommon." A faint curve touched his lips. It didn't look practiced. It looked startled, like smiling was something he had forgotten how to do naturally. "What is your name?" he asked. "Amara." "Amara Jackson." He repeated it slowly, as though saying it carried weight. "Amara." "Yes, it suits you, and you?" she asked. "Lucian," he replied after a pause. Lucian Hale. The name seemed to bring a hush into the small space. Not because it was famous, she had never heard it before, but because it carried a quiet gravity, like a title disguised as simplicity. They drove in silence for several minutes, but it was not uncomfortable. The storm softened outside as streetlights grew brighter and more regular. Occasional passing cars splashed through puddles, spraying water that gleamed under their headlights. "You live nearby?" he asked. "Couple blocks ahead," she said. "Not fancy. But it has a door and a roof, and tonight, that's enough." He nodded. Shelter is a luxury many forget to appreciate. Her gaze flicked sideways briefly. "You talk like someone who's lived a few centuries." A strange pause. His eyes caught the light again, glowing faintly before softening. "Sometimes," he murmured. "It feels that way." The truck finally rolled to a stop in front of her apartment building, a tired structure worn by time, yet stubbornly standing. Paint peeled from the edges, and the hallway light flickered like a heart that beat on despite exhaustion. Inside, she led him up the narrow staircase, each step creaking under their weight. Her door opened to a simple space. Small couch, mismatched curtains, a tiny table bearing scratch marks from years of use. It was not perfect, but it was hers. "You can sit," she said gently, reaching for a towel. "I'll make something warm. Might not be fancy, but it'll thaw you out." He accepted the towel with a polite nod. As he dried his hands, his gaze swept the room quietly, noting everything. The worn sofa, the single-framed photo on the wall of Amara, and a young girl laughing under sunlit trees, the stack of overdue bills barely hidden under a magazine. "You care for someone?" he asked softly, nodding toward the picture. "My little sister," she said with a faint smile. "She's all I've got, and I'm all she's got." "Loyalty like that is rare," Lucian said thoughtfully, "and precious." She poured hot water into 2 mugs, steam rising like whispered prayers. "It's just life," she replied. "Some of us get dealt better cards. The rest of us learn how to play the bad ones quietly." He studied her as though those words meant more than she realized. "You carry pain very gracefully," he said. She blinked, slightly embarrassed. "I don't even know you, and you're already psychoanalyzing me." A low chuckle escaped him, quiet but real. "I apologize." Old habits, they spoke lightly after that, about nothing important and everything that mattered. The rain slowed, tapping lazily against the window now, as if it too had grown tired of its own fury. Eventually, silence settled again, but this time it wasn't the kind that pressed down on her chest. It felt peaceful. Lucian's eyes finally closed as exhaustion pulled him into a rare, unfamiliar rest. Amara watched him for just a moment before settling by the window, arms wrapped loosely around her own body. She didn't know who he truly was. She didn't know that darkness lived beneath the calm lines of his face, or that power beyond human measure rested quietly behind his stillness. All she knew was this: she had chosen kindness on a night that begged for indifference. And somewhere deep in the shadows of the world, something ancient had noticed. When morning crept in, pale and slow, she found the couch empty once more. The mug washed, the blanket folded perfectly. And on the table, a note. "Thank you for reminding me that humanity still breathes." L.H. Amara folded it carefully, placing it inside her coat like it was something sacred, a moment to hold on to when the world tried to convince her that goodness was foolish. Outside, the rain had faded into memory, leaving behind wet pavement and a city pretending to be ordinary again. She never saw the silhouette standing at the corner, watching her walk toward the diner. A tall figure, eyes pale as moonlight. A man who did not cast a shadow, and who had not forgotten her face. By midday, the diner looked the same as it always had, noisy, crowded. Falsely cheerful, but something invisible had shifted. It was the absence. The way table 3 sat untouched. The way no one hummed softly while wiping the counter. The way the air itself felt slightly colder without Amara's warmth inside it. Mr. Barker pretended not to notice. He strutted behind the counter, chin high, snapping orders, correcting napkin angles, and polishing surfaces that were already gleaming. "Owners coming today," he reminded everyone for the 10th time. We need perfection. This is not a charity shelter. This is a business. Mia swallowed hard. Jamal avoided eye contact. No one dared mention Amara's name. At exactly 12:30 p.m., the bell over the door chimed, and the atmosphere shifted. A tall man stepped inside, and though no one knew who he was yet, every instinct in the room whispered authority. His presence carried a quiet gravity that pulled attention without effort. He walked as though the space belonged to him, not arrogantly, but as one who had owned far more than buildings in his lifetime. His silver-streaked hair was neatly combed, his dark coat immaculate despite the storm from the night before. The cane in his hand barely touched the floor, more symbol than necessity. But it was his eyes that silenced the chatter. Gray, cold, ancient. They did not blink the way normal eyes did. Mr. Barker rushed forward immediately, smile wide, eager, oily. "Mr. Hale," he announced, extending his hand. "Stephen Barker, General Manager. It's an honor to finally meet you, sir. I've kept everything running exactly as your corporate standards demand." Lucian Hale's gaze flicked over the interior, slow and observant. He noticed everything: the corner where dust had gathered, the faint scratch marks where a chair had repeatedly failed to stay still, the nervous stiffness of the staff. But when his eyes reached the empty section near the window, something hardened quietly within him. He turned back to Barker. "Where is she?" Lucian asked. Barker blinked. "Excuse me, sir?" "The young woman who worked here yesterday," Lucian clarified, voice calm but deliberate. "The one who greeted customers as though their moods were her responsibility. The one who apologized for things that were never her fault." Unease crept into Barker's posture. "Oh, Jackson," he scoffed lightly. "Amara, yeah, we let her go this morning. Late again, always with the excuses. Not professional material, unfortunately. Can't have staff who think kindness outweighs discipline." The air went still. Lucian did not blink. "You fired her?" he repeated, tone almost mild. "Yes, sir. Had to maintain standards. You understand business, don't you? Some people just don't fit the image." The word image seemed to echo faintly around the diner's walls. Lucian's fingers tightened on the cane just slightly, a small sound, like the soft creak of old wood under pressure. He stepped closer. "You are correct, Mr. Barker," he said quietly. "I understand business very well." He turned his gaze toward the rest of the staff. "Tell me," he asked, "was Miss Jackson a problem employee?" No one answered at first. Fear hung thick in their throats. Then Jamal cleared his voice. "No, sir. She covered shifts, never complained, always kind." Mia nodded quickly. "She helped everyone. Customers loved her. She stayed late when I was sick. She didn't deserve that." Lucian looked back at Barker. "Call her," he said. Barker forced a laugh. "Sir, it's already done. We can replace her easily. Plenty of people desperate for work." Lucian's gaze sharpened subtly, like winter settling over stone. "I said," he repeated, voice colder now, "bring her back." A strange silence swallowed the diner. Now, 5 minutes later, the bell chimed again. Amara stepped inside uncertainly, her uniform wrinkled from the rush, eyes confused and cautious. She looked smaller somehow, as if the morning had taken a piece of her spirit and not returned it. Every customer turned. Every worker paused, and Lucien's eyes softened the same way they had beside the road in the storm. "Miss Jackson," he said gently. "Thank you for coming back so quickly." Her breath caught. "Mr. Hale." A flicker of recognition passed across her face. Shock, confusion, disbelief. "You," she whispered. Mr. Barker stiffened behind them. Lucien turned slightly, positioning himself just enough that he stood between Amara and Barker. Not loud, not aggressive, just present, protective without needing to announce it. "You were dismissed unfairly this morning," Lucien said calmly. "And I do not permit injustice within my establishments." Barker's smile cracked. Sir, with respect, she broke company rules. Lucian raised his hand slightly, silencing him without a word. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a fraction. You dismissed a woman for choosing humanity over convenience, he stated. For compassion over comfort. That is not poor work ethic. That is rare character. He turned to Amara. You helped an old man on the roadside without knowing who he was. He continued softly. You opened your home. You offered food. You asked nothing in return. That is not weakness. His eyes lingered on hers, something deep and impossible stirring behind them. That, he said quietly, is the kind of spirit that changes worlds. A faint murmur spread through the diners. Mr. Barker swallowed hard. Lucian's voice shifted, still calm but final. Miss Jackson is reinstated. With immediate effect, he paused, then added, and Mr. Barker, you are no longer employed here. The words hit like silent thunder. What? Barker stammered. Sir, I run this place. You did? Lucian corrected, his eyes suddenly colder than storm glass. Poorly, cruelly, and with a disregard for the dignity of those beneath you. Barker's face drained color. I built this place with my policies. You ran it, Lucian interrupted. I owned it. A long pause. In my world, Lucian added faintly, power exists to protect the vulnerable, not humiliate them. He glanced toward Amara again. The faintest hint of warmth resurfaced in his sharp features. You are safe here, he told her. No one will dismiss you for kindness again. Amara didn't know what to say. Her emotions twisted relief, confusion, gratitude, all pulling at once. Thank you, she finally whispered. Lucian gave a slow nod. But somewhere beneath his calm expression, something stirred. A hunger not for blood, but for the quiet strength in her soul. He had not saved her simply out of gratitude. The truth was far more dangerous, and far more impossible. Because Lucian Hale was not merely a wealthy businessman, he was the last vampire king of the Nocturne bloodline. Ancient, feared, unmatched, and for the first time in centuries. His heart had noticed a human girl. Dusk came slowly, as if the sky itself hesitated to disturb the fragile peace that had settled inside Amara's chest. She finished her shift in a quiet haze, her hands moving on instinct while her thoughts drifted again and again to one impossible truth. Lucian Hale, the old man in the rain. The powerful owner who silenced an entire room. The stranger who spoke like poetry and looked like silence carved into human form. Every time she replayed the day in her mind, it felt unreal, like something pulled from a storybook instead of her life. You okay, Amara? Mia asked gently as they wiped their stations for closing. Yeah, just tired, she replied, offering a weak smile. But Mia saw past it. Everyone did. Something had changed in Amara's posture, in the air around her. She no longer looked like someone waiting to be crushed by the world. She looked like someone standing at the edge of a door they didn't yet understand. By the time she left the diner, the sky had faded into velvet blue, streaked faintly with silver stars. The streetlights buzzed softly, casting long shadows across the pavement. And there he was. Lucian stood beside his black vehicle, as still as a carved monument, his dark coat moving only slightly in the cool evening breeze. The faint glow of a nearby lamppost touched his silver-streaked hair, making him appear almost unreal, like a figure from another era accidentally dropped into the present. You came, she said quietly. I gave my word, he replied. I do not break what I give. Something in that sentence felt heavier than it should have. She hesitated. So, what did you want to talk about? His gaze softened as he studied her face, the faint shadows beneath her eyes. You showed mercy to a stranger, he said softly. And you did not know that by doing so, you crossed a boundary the world has forgotten existed. A quiet wind stirred nearby leaves. Lucian, please, just say what you mean, she urged. His gaze darkened, depth shifting like midnight waters. I am not what I appeared to be that night, he whispered. Silence thickened between them. What are you? She asked, breath barely audible. His eyes lifted slightly, catching the pale glow of the moon now rising above the rooftops. And in that pale light, something changed. His pupils thinned, just slightly. His irises gleamed with a faint silver-red shimmer, like moonlight brushing over liquid metal. I am what your ancestors once whispered about in fear and reverence, he said. I am the last sovereign of the Nocturne bloodline. I am a vampire king. The words fell like quiet thunder. For a heartbeat, Amara did not move, did not speak, did not breathe. The world felt distant, unreal, as though the street beneath her feet had tipped into a dream. That's not possible, she whispered. Yet here I stand, he replied calmly. But here you remain. And that night, he continued quietly. When you opened your door to a stranded stranger, you did more than I think you realize. Her brow furrowed. What did I do? You bound yourself unknowingly to an ancient rite, he murmured. A covenant of mercy. A vow recognized only by those of my kind. Cold brushed her skin. A covenant, she whispered. Yes, he said. And by doing so, you awakened the call of my blood. He stepped slightly closer, careful, respectful, yet undeniably intense. Among my people, Lucian explained, there exists a singular bond, one that forms only when a human soul shows unwavering compassion to a vampire without knowledge of what we are. It marks you as something rare. Her breath trembled. What does it mark me as? His voice grew almost reverent. My chosen. Her eyes widened. Not for possession, he added immediately, gentle but firm. Never that, but as one whom my kind must protect with their very existence. You're saying this like I don't get a choice, she whispered. You do, he said softly. You always will. That has always been my greatest rule. He lowered his gaze slightly, as though the next words carried weight even to him. But know this, Amara Jackson, he murmured. You have caught the attention of a world older and darker than the one you know. And while I would rather shield you from it forever, he looked up again, those ancient eyes steady. You now walk within its shadow. A chill traced the night. What happens next? She asked quietly. A faint, bittersweet smile touched his lips. Next, I teach you how to survive the world that just realized you exist. Somewhere far above, a batwing brushed silence. And far below, something ancient stirred awake. The night had not ended. It had only just begun. Amara could feel it as Lucian's words lingered between them, threading through the cool air like unseen silver. The city noises felt distant, muffled, as though an invisible veil had fallen over the world she knew. A vampire king, she murmured again, testing the words like fragile glass. Yes, Lucienne replied, voice calm, almost regretful. A title I did not choose, but one I carry still. They stood beneath the dim glow of the street lamp, her heartbeat fluttering against her ribs, his presence grounded yet impossibly strange. You're saying all this like it's normal? She whispered. like I'm supposed to accept it. I do not expect you to accept anything, he said softly. Only to understand that you deserve truth. You have already shown me more courage than most humans show in a lifetime. She looked away briefly, staring at the sidewalk, at the cracked concrete and fallen leaves that felt suddenly more fragile. Truth is heavy, she said, especially when it changes everything. Lucia nodded. It always is. A soft rumble echoed faintly from the distance, thunder not born of clouds. He stiffened ever so slightly. You sent something, she noted. Yes, he replied, after a moment. Others of my kind have felt the bond awaken. They will be searching. Fear flickered in her eyes, searching. For me? For you, he confirmed. And for what you represent. And what is that? Her voice barely rose above the wind. Lucian held her gaze, his expression grave. A living defiance of their belief that humans are either prey or property. They resumed walking, but this time his presence felt more deliberate, protective, like he was silently placing himself between her and an unseen danger. What if I don't want this? She asked. What if I just want my simple life back? A shadow of understanding passed through his face. Then I will fight even my own people to preserve it. Her steps faltered. You'd go that far? He turned to her again, his eyes no longer distant or cold. They were fiercely present. I have ruled centuries of darkness, he said quietly. But no throne has ever asked me to choose kindness over power. You did not ask for this burden, and that alone makes it sacred to me. The wind carried faint, unfamiliar whispers. A low murmur that belonged to no human tongue. Lucian's jaw tightened. They are close. Her hand subconsciously clutched the sleeve of his coat. What do we do? She breathed. He hesitated only a fraction before doing something no ruler of shadow had done in generations. He lowered himself. It's not fully to the ground, but significantly enough that his height came level with her eyes. A gesture of humility so profound that even the night herself seemed to pause. I ask your trust, Lucian said, voice steady. Not as your king, not as a vampire, but as the man you helped in the rain. Silence settled, sacred and heavy. Amara's instinct should have told her to run, to scream, to reject the impossible. But instead, she remembered the way he'd thanked her. The way his eyes softened. The way he had spoken her name as though it meant something holy. I trust you, she whispered. Something ancient shifted in the air. A vow formed without sound. Lucian rose slowly back to his full height, a quiet intensity sharpening his gaze now. Then stay close to me, he said. No matter what you hear, no matter what they say, a sudden gust of cold swept the street. From the shadows of an alley across the road, 3 figures emerged. Their eyes glowed faintly red. Their movements were unnaturally smooth, nearly echoing the night itself. Pale skin, dark clothing. Their presence pressed against the air like pressure before a storm. Your Majesty, one of them said, voice silky and deceptively respectful. You have broken law. Lucian stepped forward, his back now squarely shielding Amara. She is under my protection, he said, tone ironclad. You will leave. The tallest vampire's lips curved into a thin smile. A human. Marked, you would risk our order for sentiment. And you would threaten my decree. Lucian replied coolly. The atmosphere thickened, a tension like pulled wire. King or not, another vampire muttered. She is not meant to carry that bond. Lucian's voice lowered. Dangerous now. She is not an object to be claimed. She is not a weakness. She is a human who showed mercy when none was required. And because of that, she stands above you. And they will return, he added. But next time, they may not be as restrained. Her pulse quickened. So what happens now? Lucian's gaze softened, that gentleness always returning around her like a secret he didn't fully understand himself. Now, he said, you come with me. Not as my possession, but as my guest, as my equal. To a place where you will be safe from anything that lurks beyond this world. She hesitated only a moment, and then nodded. Because somehow, deep inside her heart, she knew this truth. The king who ruled darkness had chosen to protect her light. And the girl who once walked alone in the rain was no longer alone. The car slid silently through the sleeping city, its dark windows reflecting faint traces of moonlight. Amara watched familiar streets disappear one by one, replaced by iron gates and ancient stone that seemed to rise from the earth like a forgotten memory. The place Lucian brought her to did not feel like a castle from fairy tales. It felt older. The gates opened without a sound, revealing a path lined with tall cypress trees and silver lanterns glowing with a gentle, otherworldly light. Beyond them stood an immense estate of dark stone and quiet grace, its windows lit softly like the eyes of something that never slept. This is my ancestral residence, Lucian said as they stepped out. Sanctuary for my kind. And tonight, yours as well. Amara swallowed, awe and uncertainty weaving together inside her chest. It's beautiful and terrifying. A faint, knowing curve touched his lips. Most truths are both. Inside, the halls whispered with stillness. Tapestries lined the walls depicting ancient kingdoms, storms frozen in thread, and figures dressed like kings and queens from eras long gone. Shadows moved gently across marble floors, but none dared touch her. Servants bowed as Lucian passed, their eyes wide with curiosity when they saw her beside him, a human, walking at the side of their king. He guided her to a warm, quiet chamber overlooking a moonlit garden. Soft curtains fluttered with night breeze. A simple elegance filled the room, not cold, not opulent, just peaceful. You are safe here, he said, his voice softer now, stripped of command. No one will harm you within these walls, not while I breathe. She turned to face him fully, heart trembling with emotions she didn't yet have words for. You chose me, she said quietly. You could have ignored me, forgotten me, but you walked into my life and turned it upside down. Lucian held her gaze steadily. I did not choose you because you needed saving, he replied. I chose you because you already knew how to save others without power. A silence settled, deep and gentle. And now? She asked. Not control, but respect. Slowly, she raised her hand. I don't know what tomorrow holds, she said softly. But I know one thing. I will never be ashamed of being kind. Lucian's eyes darkened, not with hunger, but with profound devotion. He slipped the ring gently onto her finger. In that moment, ancient magic stirred, not violent, not consuming, but warm, steady, like dawn rising after centuries of night. Across the estate, every vampire bowed, not to their king. To her, Amara Jackson, the human who chose mercy, the soul who softened a sovereign of shadows. Days passed. The news spread faster than fear ever could. Mr. Barker's behavior was investigated, his discriminatory practices exposed. Apologies were demanded. Consequences delivered. Meanwhile, Amara was given not just safety, but opportunity. education, a voice, respect, a world that finally met her kindness with dignity. She never changed who she was. She still smiled softly at strangers, still forgave easily, still believed that light mattered. And Lucian, the cold ruler of night, grew quiet around her presence, less distant, less burdened. He watched her laugh in the moon garden, watched her speak gently to servants, watched her defend the dignity of humans who wandered too close to vampire lands. One night, as stars glittered like scattered promises above them, he spoke again. "You have changed me," he confessed. "You have shown me that strength does not always roar." Amara smiled up at him. "And you showed me that power doesn't have to be cruel." The bond between them did not rush. It grew slowly, carefully, built on trust, silence, shared moments, and a fragile but real affection neither of them forced to define too quickly. Because love born from kindness does not burn. It glows. And as the city below continued its imperfect rhythm, the girl who once walked alone in the rain now stood as protected as moonlight behind royal walls, not because she was weak, but because she had been brave when no one was watching. In the end, the greatest lesson whispered through both worlds, human and supernatural, was simple. Respect every soul. Do not judge by appearance. Kindness echoes further than cruelty ever can. The powerless can rise. The overlooked can inspire kings. And even the darkest night will bow to true compassion. The end.